Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk Podcast, free agent edition. We've been holding out as long as we could, so that's why this is popping in this afternoon on Tuesday. Reason being, we're trying to see if the Patriots are going to make that move, and the move they need to make is at wide receiver, and the wide receiver that they have targeted is Calvin Ridley. Phil will join us in just a couple of minutes, but as far as we know, as we begin this pod, and we will update it later if we have to with an addendum or whatever, we'll figure it out. Ridley right now is mulling an offer from the Patriots, but according to Adam Schefter, it's not what he wants yet. And his inclination is to stay with the Jaguars. Additionally, this is an interesting sidelight to this. If Ridley re-signs with the Jaguars prior to the start of the league year on Wednesday, then the Atlanta Falcons will get a second-round pick. Ridley, of course, was traded from Atlanta to Jacksonville. If he's signed after the league year, allowed to hit free agency, it becomes a third-round pick. So, is that part of the dynamic existing with Calvin Ridley? His team's not going to sign him and put ink to paper until after 4 o'clock on Wednesday when the league year begins. We don't know. But the Patriots do have some time to convince a good, not great, wide receiver to come aboard. Meanwhile, as you know, the Patriots have re-signed Michael Onwenu. They have re-signed last week Hunter Henry, the tight end. They have re-signed Josh Uche, tagged Kyle Duggar, and re-signed Kendrick Bourne. And you're looking at that and you go, oh my God, it's the same team. Have they gotten any better? And there's a stray offensive tackle from the Steelers, too, that they have signed to, kind of as a depth piece. Should be better than Calvin Anderson and Riley Reif. But there's a lot of conversation right now about what the Patriots aren't doing anything. Are they aggressively trying to get better or not? And my counter to that is, we knew what the free agent market looked like before Monday and Tuesday rolled around. There's not a lot out there. Think about this. Mike Onwenu was one of the very best offensive linemen, and he signed kind of a team-friendly deal. He was targeted for 3 years, $55 million. He's going to come in at less than that. Hunter Henry, he was the number 2 tight end on the market. Again, weak tight end class. If Dalton Schultz and Hunter Henry are at the top of it, no slight on Hunter Henry, but he's coming off an injury. Kyle Duggar, again, is another player who's in the top 30 of most people's rankings among players. The upshot is, we knew going into 2023 that Henry, Duggar, and Onwenu were priority free agents for the Patriots. All of them had good years, as Bourne did pre-injury after being exiled in 22. The Patriots re-signed all of them. None of them are all pros. None of them are Pro Bowlers. Any, however, had they left, would have had to have been replaced. And there were no legitimate upgrades in free agency to do so. So while you say, man, they're just out there treading water. Yeah, I mean, in a way they are, but those players' contracts expired. And if they didn't bring them back, they'd be worse than the team that they were. So I was on EEI today and they said, do they get credit for that? Yeah, they get credit for that. They had to pay more money for them, and they did so. They didn't get worse. I'm also hearing people say, these are all Bill guys. Maybe he shouldn't have been let go. And I ask you, would Bill Belichick have re-signed Mike Onwenu or tagged Kyle Duggar when he virtually never retained players into their second contracts? Probably not. So this is a team that went through 8 quarterbacks last year. They had no right tackle to speak of until Onwenu had to go out there. They let a good wide receiver go in Jacoby Myers in favor of 2 bad ones. And Bill half reveled in the crumbling of Mac and never bothered all year to sign a veteran backup. They were the worst offense in football because they couldn't find their ass with both hands in free agency and the draft over the last few years. So you can't talk about buyer's remorse when they re-signed guys that everyone knew they needed to re-sign. Because as bad as they were, Henry, Onwenu, and Kendrick Bourne were among the best players they had. And there weren't other guys out there. What do people expect to happen in free agency? Think they were going to make a test tube quarterback? There's some savior out there. Patriots have to take their medicine. They have to eat their vegetables. They have to build the team brick by flipping brick. Some of the things they found in the 4-13 wreckage can be salvaged. it doesn't mean it wasn't a wreck. Meanwhile, bring Phil in. We'll get into some more conversation about Calvin Ridley, about the re-signs, and about what he thinks the Patriots have done and should still do in free agency. All right, here comes Phil Perry right now. Phil, am I being too blasé about the Patriots' perceived lack of aggression? I mean, I'm saying here that they prevented themselves from getting worse by re-signing some of their best players. Not that they had a lot of good ones. They re-signed some of their best ones, dodged that bullet, and there's just not that much out there. So am I being too blasé?
No, I don't think you're being too blasé, and I actually like some of the things they've done. I mean, re-signing Mike Onwenu was a necessity, and they did it. And they paid him, in terms of average annual value, they paid him sort of at the top of the market, Tom, or near it, for both guards and right tackles. And so good for them. They had the money to spend. They had the obvious need. They identified him as a core player, and they worked to keep him around. Kudos. I do feel as though, Tom, that they are so bereft of offensive talent that not to add more, if that's where this thing ends up, not to add more would be a mistake and a missed opportunity. And so we'll see what happens with Calvin Ridley.
Yes.
We'll see what happens with him. He's still available. We'll see what happens with Tyron Smith and Jonah Williams. But these are premium positions where you need help. You have the money. If I'm a Patriots fan, I want to see it get spent on maybe even two of those guys, not just one of them.
Okay, so Calvin Ridley coming aboard will not satisfy you in terms of saying, hey, they went after it. Because I'm kind of looking at it and say, if they do that, but again, they don't have a left tackle, Tom. You can't just say that's fine.
No, I listen, if they get Calvin Ridley and they say, well, Owenu's going to be our solution at right tackle, and we feel good about our, they're not going to say this to us in all likelihood. But if they say to themselves, we feel good about our chances of getting a tackle, it's such a deep tackle class, we're at the top of the second round, we could easily trade into the, back half of the first and get a tackle, then okay. But you do need something that elevates you from what you're doing right now, which is essentially treading water for a team that went 4-13 last year, right? They've kept their best guys around, but they haven't really added people that are going to make a massive positive difference.
But it's still an outlay. See, and that's the thing is it goes back further than just Monday in my mind. The team was really bad, completely, as you said, bereft of offensive talent, and it was about to get worse. So all they could do was
the bleeding.
They plugged the hole, and now they're catching their breath and looking around and saying, okay, the hole's plugged. What can we do to make this ship a little more seaworthy here? And there's not really anyone there. You got a Calvin Ridley, you got an old ass Tyron Smith, you got a, Jonah Williams, who is a starting level player, but not a Pro Bowl level player. But you got to do more, and you can't put all your eggs in that draft basket. I guess what I'm saying is don't just go off half cocked just to put names there at those positions on the depth chart. Sometimes you might need to let the game come to you. Again, Calvin Ridley, to me, if you walk out of this with no Calvin Ridley, my tune's going to change a little bit. However, I wonder if Elliott Wolf's status in all plays into his approach. Your thoughts on that?
I find this really interesting because they, being the Patriots, are in a relatively unique situation where their de facto GM is, for all intents and purposes, in the middle of a tryout. The Patriots have made it clear to me, and I know to you as well, that they do plan on having interviews for front office people after the draft. Is that to replace Elliott Wolf, who has been given control of the 53-man roster? If there's disagreement, I think all things being equal, Robert Kraft would love for there to be consensus among his top people on what they decide to do in free agency in the draft. But Elliott Wolf has final say. Is he at all looking at this, Tom, and saying, well, Robert Kraft and really every owner in the NFL would rather have a good team that doesn't cost a lot versus a team that is good but does cost a lot. And so let me try to thread this needle as I am playing for my job here.
Sure.
And I do wonder if he's reluctant to go off half-cocked, to use your description, and just shell out a bunch of money and overpay for a Jonah Williams and overpay for Calvin Ridley so that he doesn't want to listen to the Jacksonville Jaguars and their offer for him. Is that at all at play? Because it is a unique scenario, it would not stun me if Elliot Wolf has in mind, okay, what would my owner, my boss, really love for me to do here so that I can have this opportunity, not just for this offseason, but for several.
And I think he might certainly have that in the back of his mind, but he'd also have, I mean, Occam's razor on this, the most clear example is there's just not that many good free agents out there. There's just not that many good players. And the Patriots did catch themselves in 2021 spending a record amount of money in free agency on some players who worked out great, Matthew Judon, Hunter Henry, some players who kind of worked out, Jalen Mills, two players who were very high priced who didn't work out, Jonnu Smith and Nelson Aguilar. And I'm probably missing somebody in there. Devon
Godshaw made a good amount of money, and I think he's actually made pretty good on that.
Yeah, he's about Bourne level in terms of contribution.
I think he's a run stuffing tackle, so it's kind of hard to gauge, but their run defense has been pretty good the last couple of years.
So in the end, that spendthrift activity by the Patriots, which was so out of character, was forced by a team that was in post-Brady decline and needed an influx of talent and had a crap ton of money and was dealing with the pandemic cap drop, which eliminated a lot of teams' ability to do things. So it was a confluence of circumstances. The Patriots spent like drunken sailors, and then they woke up hungover when they looked at their Nelson Aguilar and Jonnu Smith and said, oh, man, I brought them home. So it's a cautionary tale that happened right here in this organization. Spend the money, burn cash, do your thing, but don't do it just to do it. And I'm listening to Felger, as many of us do, and flicking back and forth, listening to sports radio talk. Felger's flapping his arms about what the Patriots haven't done anything. Not aggressive, conservative. They're not better. You are as bad as Washington right now. You are not better than Sam Darnold and Kevin Stefanski, to which I say to Mike, you don't have a realistic view of how bad the team was. That's where they were at the end of the year. Those other teams didn't get any better. The Patriots dug themselves this hole over a period of time. There is no elevator out. You got to build a ladder and climb it. That's my contention. They need Calvin Ridley, though.
So that's the thing. I think we are sort of on the same page, Tom. And we're recording this on Tuesday evening ahead of Quick Slants. We got to go soon because you have to get ready for slants. I don't think you're wearing the quarter zip on Quick Slants. You got to bring it. It's free agency edition of Quick Slants. Please bring it when it comes to the wardrobe. I think we're in the same place though, because they have the resources to make their team better. What's the point of holding on to it? I mean, you can carry it over to next year, I guess. There's so much money out there. And yes, there's not a lot of great players out there, but there are a few. And you should be in the lead for some of them, given the resources you have and given how bad your team has been. And so I just want, and I think I'm consistent in this because we talked about this for years at the tail end of the Bill Belichick era. I want some urgency.
Yep.
I want urgency. I want a team that's going to be competitive. I want a team that people that we speak to on these podcasts and write for and broadcast to on television, I want them to be interested. I want them to have hope. There really is no reason other than to maybe hold on to it and spend next year, to not spend the money, not use the resources that you have at your disposal to make your team better in the here and now. And so,
unless the simple fact is the players aren't good enough to spend that kind of money.
No, they are. They're way better than the guys you have. They're way better. It's not even close. You don't even have a second tackle.
Like
Calvin Ridley, Jonah Williams, Tyron Smith, Danielle Hunter, Kyle Fuller. All these guys would start for you. I just named 5 guys that would start for you at positions of need, premium positions that cost money. But they all would start for you. They'd all make a difference for you. They'd all be, if you added them all, it'd probably be the difference of several wins. I really believe that. And if it's the difference of, 5 and 8 and you say, who cares? I would say 8-win teams are usually sort of in the hunt right up until the very end. And that's what the fans, I think, deserve. The fans deserve it, Tom. They deserve a season after what they've gone through the last 2 years when it's been hopeless, quite frankly.
Yeah, they do deserve a season. You deserve a season. I deserve a season. We all follow this because it's going to be fun. Maybe I'm just cheap. I look at Tyron Smith and I'm like, he's 33, played 13 games last year, and he played 17 combined in the 3 years previous. I'm leery of that. Then I moved to Jonah Williams and I'm like, well, okay. I mean, he played left tackle, Phil, but then they moved him to right tackle because they found a better guy in free agency. And now you're going to go and get this guy in free agency and say, you're our left tackle.
When you have a big giant bag of air at left tackle right now, yeah, I might do that. I might be willing to go do that because you have literally no one to play the position.
I like your Kyle Fuller take. He's still out there. It's one of the Phil path back to respectability moves to make was Kyle Fuller. Phil has hit on all of them, by the way. Virtually every revamping suggestion he's made, the Patriots have actually done. So I wonder if Elliot Wolf really is even running the team, and it might be Phil. Do you at all think that the Patriots have locked themselves into quarterback at number 3 with the signing of Jacoby Brissett?
To me, I'll just tell you, after a few conversations that I had with people in the league outside of the Patriots organization, they look at this as a strong signal that they will be drafting a quarterback at 3 overall because they see Jacoby Brissett as a backup / mentor / placeholder for a short period of time for a young quarterback. And I don't disagree with that. And what I reported soon after the combine was if the Patriots are convicted in the quarterback that falls to them at 3, they're going to take that player. If they're not, then they'll trade down. I would add to that, and this isn't based on my reporting, it would just be an inference. But if you weren't sold or you didn't think you very likely will be sold in the near future on the quarterback that falls to you at 3, Tom, wouldn't you do something more aggressive at the quarterback? Wouldn't you have traded for Justin Fields maybe? Or maybe even signed Baker Mayfield, said, you know what? This is our guy for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
We're not ready. The roster's not ready. This is our Alex Smith. We'll get our Patrick Mahomes when we're ready for our Patrick Mahomes. But that's not what they've done. I do think this is a sign. This is how the league has taken it. This is a sign that they're leaning in that direction. I think what the Patriots would tell you is, well, we're not sold yet. We haven't gone through our entire process yet. So don't lock us into a quarterback there. But now they at least have that option. That's how I would put it. They've left their options open by signing Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah, and I agree with you. When you see Jacoby Brissett come in, you're like, okay, well, he's in on a 1-year deal for $8 million. He's going to keep the place safe and warm and help whoever it is to understand the Alex Van Pelt offense. And then maybe he gets re-signed again next year, but this is a placeholder quarterback. But on the other hand, too, they needed a quarterback. And yes, Gardner Minshew, in my opinion, is a better player. But they really weren't. You're not going to do Kirk Cousins and $40 million to run around with a really horrible offensive roster. And Baker Mayfield wanted to go back where he was, and they spent a ton of money on him. He was going to be hard to pry away. So to me, you had to get Jacoby Brissett one way or the other. I'm not saying that this – I just don't know if this is a smoking gun certainty. And you're not saying it is, that they're going with quarterback at number 3. But I do think, as you said, it is their default right now. They have to be moved off their spot by somebody's ineptitude, whether it be Daniels or May, whoever falls. They have to be moved off their spot where they are inclined right now to take a quarterback. So agree in a different way?
I think that sounds right to me. I just think, listen, what we have to go off, what's on the record? Elliot Wolf at the Combine telling us it's a strong quarterback class. Pat Stewart, very highly valued front office person for the Patriots, telling the team's website in a video produced from Indianapolis, it's a really strong quarterback class. The entire league feeling as though, and sources have told me, they feel strongly that quarterbacks will go 1, 2, and 3 in the draft. And I had one person tell me they might even go 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the draft, with J.J. McCarthy moving his way up the list. So when that seems to be the consensus, and you have a quarterback need, and you just signed a player who is sort of a high-end backup, has made a few starts and has flashed some ability in the past of being able to win you a game here or there, but is not a full-time starter.
And you have a GM on trial.
And you have a GM on trial where, listen, every owner would love to have a quarterback who can play on a rookie contract. It feels like all signs are pointing in that direction that they're going to go there until and if they get moved off their spot because something happens between now and the draft where they say, you know what? Player X, player Y, whichever one might fall to us at 3, we ain't sold on that guy. Then I think you see them trade back and build that way.
Sensible. But I think that aspect that you mentioned earlier with Elliott Wolf is worth really underlining on this in terms of the number 3 overall pick. Even if it's a genius move and you get Joe Alton, now you have 2 first, and you have, a first round pick, 2 next year, going into the 2025 draft, and you don't know who the quarterbacks will be. We didn't know Jaden Daniels was going to turn into Jaden Daniels either. So somebody might be electric by this time next year. That takes some guts, especially if Drake May goes to Minnesota and suddenly him and Justin Jefferson have 27 touchdowns by the All-Star break. No All-Star break in football. It'll be tough. It'll be tough for our guy, Elliott, there to live that down. So, all right. What's your remaining wish list, Phil, for what the Patriots will do? You've already mentioned Fuller. You've mentioned Jonah Williams. You've mentioned Calvin Ridley. Is there anything else out there that you say, if those 3 guys aren't there at corner, wide receiver, and tackle, that you can do? You can throw in Tyron Smith too, but second wave free agency used to be a thing. I don't know if there is anymore.
Well, it's interesting. I feel like some of these markets have moved relatively slowly. And maybe that's a sign of how teams view certain positions in the draft. The running back market went crazy on day one. I think that's due in part to the fact that this is widely regarded as a weak-ass running back class in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
Receiver, maybe the reason Calvin Ridley hasn't moved is because of this trade compensation thing with the Falcons, where the Falcons are set to get a 3rd-round pick for Calvin Ridley. But if he actually signs with the Jaguars before the league year technically begins, then that actually bumps up to a 2nd. And so that has stagnated the whole process for everybody at that position. But that's a strong position in the draft. And so teams, I think, are waiting and saying, well, we'll get a cheap guy. We'll get a young guy in April. My wish list would be Ridley 1, either Smith or Williams to play tackle 2. I would love for the Patriots, if I'm a Patriots fan, to sign Danielle Hunter, who is the best pass rusher left on the market. I think the Patriots need pass rush help even after just re-signing to a 1-year deal. Josh Uche, low money deal, low level deal. Hunter's a stud. Mm-hmm. And I think gives you what you need for a team that's going to play a lot of man-to-man defense and try to get after the quarterback. Then I would have somebody like Fuller to play corner, or your guy. And I love this idea. You love my corner idea. I love your corner idea. Steph Gilmore. 1 year. Guy's going to play a lot of man. I think he's still a starting caliber corner. That would be, for now, my wish list of guys that are still left on the board.
Fair. Now, there's a lot of big ticket items there with left tackle and edge and corner. Even if those guys are not top of the market guys, they're going to be pricey. So might be hard to fit them all in, but you got to hit on some of them. And the first thing they got to hit on is Calvin Ridley. Phil, we're going to push away from the table to get ready for slants, as you mentioned. Additionally, there'll be a Next Pats podcast. And on Thursday, we're going to have our old friend Thor Nystrom, who had an unbelievably prescient evaluation of Mac Jones in 2021. We'll play that for you on Thursday. And then we'll bring in Thor to tell you who the Patriots ought to be ogling at number 3 overall. And it's not any of the aforementioned conventional number 3 quarterbacks, the 3 guys. He wants the Patriots to go off the board. All right, I'll give you a spoiler. He says J.J. McCarthy. Okay? And we're going to get into that. And Phil's head's going to levitate off his shoulders. Enjoy. We will be back at you if anything breaks on the Calvin Ridley front, just to give you a quick, addendum. Peace.